everyone, welcome back to our coverage of the 160th anniversary of the Overland Campaign. Like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's great to have you here with us. We have been covering the wilderness, Spotsylvania Courthouse, North Anna, and we finally made our way down here to Cold Harbor. And Cold Harbor actually has a number of layers to it. We're in the midst of the Gaines's Mill battle from nearly 2 years prior to this major engagement here at Cold Harbor. And I would like to call your attention to the property just across the field over my left shoulder. You might see Chris White out there. He's getting ready to launch our Mosquito, our drone, but you may also see a blue sign over there. That's one of our Preserve Forever signs. That is a 28-acre tract that you, the members of the American Battlefield Trust, have helped us to preserve. And I mentioned that there are layers of history here at Gaines's Mill in Cold Harbor. Well, that tract is also related to the Battle of Gaines's Mill. On June 27th, 1862, Confederates are going to begin attacking across that track from left to right across the camera toward Fitzjohn Porter's lines above Bosun's Creek. Courtney's Richmond, Virginia battery is going to unlimber up there. They engage in counter battery fire with batteries from Porter's line. You're also going to see Maxty Gregg's brigade. Remember, Gregg is going to be mortally wounded, die at Fredericksburg, attack from the road here toward Porter's lines. You're also going to have Arnold Elzey's brigade attacking across that tract as well. So come down here to Cold Harbor. There's many layers of history here. We just visited another layer of history of the Cold Harbor Tavern. Go back and take a look at that video, but that's another site that you have helped us preserve. Now, to get us down here to Cold Harbor, Lee and Grant have clashed at the North Anna River. Grant has decided to swing off to the south and east, move around Lee's right flank once again. But I think to a certain degree, he's boxing himself in. He's moving into an area that's bounded by the Pamunkey River off to the north and east, and to the south and east, the Chickahominy. I think this is kind of odd for Grant to do because he's turned to maneuver time and time again over the month of May. But I think he's starting to think about one last major effort against the Confederates. I think he wants to replicate what he did on May 12th, 1864 at the Muleshoe, where he was able to take out an entire Confederate division. Grant's looking for a knockout punch against Lee. And as the armies begin to filter into this area, or rather into the area off to our north and east beyond Richmond, they're going to engage at Totopotomoy Creek, at Bethesda Church. But then on May 30th, May 31st, the fighting is going to extend down into this area that we are standing in. We've talked throughout these series of videos about how important these road networks are. And there's a very important intersection just a couple miles behind me that's going to come into play as the month of May comes to a close. We talked earlier in one of our videos about how in early May, the Brock Road Plank Road was the most important military intersection in the entire world. Well, I'm here to tell you that at the end of the month and into the early days of June, the Cold Harbor intersection is going to become the most important military intersection in the world. Why? Because you look over to the right, this road here will lead you right to the Confederate capital at Richmond. And then beyond that, at the Cold Harbor intersection, another road will lead down to Grant's supply base on the Pamunkey River, White House Landing. And as the two armies begin to filter into this area, there's going to be some major cavalry combat May 30th, May 31st. Again, we covered that in one of our other videos. But then the infantry is going to begin to arrive on the afternoon of June 1st. They're going to begin filtering in. The 6th Corps under Horatio Wright being pulled from Grant's far right flank, coming down here to reinforce and relieve Phil Sheridan's cavalry. But also coming up from White House Landing is William Boldy Smith's men from the 18th Corps, from the Army of the James. They've been operating south of Richmond under Ben Butler, and Grant has called them into the Army to reinforce the Army, to try to replenish those depleted ranks that he has. And on the evening of June 1st at about 6 o'clock, the Federals are going to step off from the area of the intersection, moving toward us to the Confederate line that's just out here in this wood line. And to talk more about that attack, I'm going to bring on my good buddy from the Richmond National Battlefield, Mark Wilcox. Mark, welcome and take it away.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Really appreciate you being out here. And exactly right. You've got some very special things happening as the Union Army is moving from the north, heading straight south with Ulysses S. Grant commanding all Union armies, He is riding with the main army here, the Army of the Potomac, doing that end run, getting around the Confederate right flank, just continuing to engage. That is what changes, and that's what separates this campaign from a lot of the others. It's no longer a campaign where the two sides will fight, they'll break apart, go back into camp, regroup, refit, and maybe a few months later go at it again. The Overland Campaign is designed to be constant contact, constant combat, designed to wear down the Confederate Army, and it does just that. But it also wears down the boys of the Army of the Potomac as well. It's a grueling month, May of 1864. As Dan has said, and maybe some other videos, you've talked about the cavalry fight that takes place just 1 mile down this road at the crossroads of Old Cold Harbor Tavern. Of course, that was just the name of the tavern. No harbor anywhere to speak of except in Richmond, 9 miles to the west. And a division of Union cavalry under Brigadier General Alfred Torbert is going to defeat Fitzhugh Lee's 2 brigades of Virginia cavalry in the crossroads on May the 31st. But there's something special too. Robert E. Lee has received some reinforcements. A division of troops from Beauregard's Petersburg Command, Robert Hoke's division, is starting to arrive. 1 brigade from North Carolina, Thomas Clingman's North Carolina Brigade, will get here, and they're going to take part in that cavalry battle down on May the 31st. The Union cavalry is going to prevail. There's going to be a flank attack that hits the Confederates. They get thrown into confusion, and they're going to fall back about 1 mile and start relocating right along that tree line right behind me there. It buoys Ulysses Grant's optimism here, because never before had Union cavalry defeated Confederate infantry. So now the Union Army, who's been marching from the north, now they're going to change direction, right-hand turn. They're going to be coming right at us. On the early morning of June the 1st, Robert E. Lee, who is now hedging his bets, he's bringing some of his troops from the 1st Corps to Cold Harbor. They have been locked in stalemate about 6 miles to the north of Totopotomoy Creek. Lee believes that now Grant is going to hit Cold Harbor, and it makes sense. If he can roll up Lee's extreme right flank, Richmond is ripe for the taking. Capture the government, bag the president. This thing possibly is going to be over here in June of 1864. And the Confederates have fallen back. Lee wants to get the crossroads back. It's an important crossroads, because if you control that, you control the use of those roads, right? And as the Confederate 1st Corps start to arrive, Joseph Kershaw, now newly in divisional command, is going to send his old brigade, the old Kershaw Brigade, now commanded by a man named Lawrence Kit. He is a Charleston dandy. He is a politician. He is not a soldier, and he is going to try to wrest control of the crossroads from the Union cavalry, and he's going to fail dismally. He is going to receive a mortal wound. It's a half-hearted attack, as a matter of fact, but the Union Army is able to hold. Many of the Union troopers are armed with those 7-shot Spencer repeating carbines. So you've got a superiority in firepower here. But now Grant is going to order an assault. It makes sense to assault here, to break the Confederate lines. I've always thought of Cold Harbor as something very similar to Gettysburg. The two sides never planned to fight here. That was never part of the program. It developed here. Men started coming. Parts of the Army started arriving. And this is going to happen starting really on June the 1st. The Union 6th Corps, under General Wright, is going to be ordered to come from the extreme right flank of the Union Army. They get that order sometime in the early morning hours. It's going to be a 15-mile march. And if anyone who comes here knows, we love to read our quotes from some of the soldiers. One soldier from the Union 6th Corps wrote this. He said, "We're going to have another of those killing night marches as soon as if we can start out of a country worse than the wilderness, if that's possible. Marching had completely worn us out. We were so reduced in strength and mental perception that it was a matter of dispute whether we were living or dead. It was simply impossible to keep awake as overtaxed nature had reached its limits." The battle on June the 1st was supposed to take place at roughly 9 a.m. And Grant is going to order those 2 Army Corps, Horatio Wright's 6th Corps and Baldy Smith's, William F. Baldy Smith's 18th Corps, the Army of the James. They've arrived. They arrived at White House Landing, and conflicting orders are going to send the 18th Corps back to Newcastle Ferry, only to be corrected and have them marching. These poor guys are marching throughout the heat of the day. The Union 6th Corps marching through the night, however, the first elements are going to arrive here roughly 10 o'clock. More elements are going to be showing up around noon. maybe about 2:30 or 3, the last elements are getting here. These guys are worn out. Baldy Smith's 18th Corps arrives right around 4 o'clock or so. So, this battle continuously is being postponed. It's not until about 6 p.m. that the Union Army, these two corps, are going to be ready to assault. Now, across the field from us, on either side of the road, is the Union 6th Corps. David Russell's division is going to be straddling the road here. And right in front of us is the 2nd Brigade of Russell's division, commanded by Brigadier General, newly appointed Brigadier General Emory Upton. And he has, with his troops, a brand new regiment, pretty much. It's the 2nd Connecticut Heavy Artillery Regiment. Excuse me, they have just completed about 2 years of guarding the nation's capital. I mean, this is easy duty. They've got 2 years of steady meals, 3 meals a day. They're in their own bunks every night. Their uniforms look brand new. And now they're going to get marched into the infantry. They're assigned to the 6th Corps. And, the Union Army had a habit of being really rough on the rookies. And the men of the 2nd Connecticut Heavies come marching in, and the veterans of the 6th Corps would jeer at them. They call them bandbox soldiers. The 2nd Connecticut Heavies have never been in combat before, but I've always thought these men were afraid on June the 1st. They were maybe not so afraid of battle, but maybe more afraid of not getting into that fight and not proving themselves to the veterans and not becoming part of that brotherhood. They were more afraid of missing out. They are in the first line of Emory Upton's attack on June the 1st. The rest of his regiments are going to be stacked behind him in a couple more lines. He's going to have a total of 4 lines. Now, the Confederate Army, it's Robert Hoke's division, is right here. They're straddling the road as well. Joseph Kershaw has arrived, part of the Confederate 1st Corps, and they are lining up to the left of Hoke. The Union 6th Corps fanning out on the other side of Cold Harbor Road, and Robert Hoke gets a little nervous. It looks as though his right flank is going to be in jeopardy. And so he is going to reach out and order Johnson Haygood's South Carolina infantry to cross the road and stem that tide to protect the Confederate right flank. We got a problem. Robert Hoke doesn't report to General Kershaw that he has moved those South Carolinians. Kershaw has no idea that there's a hole, about a maybe 30-yard gap in his line. If you look across the field here, diagonally across, you'll see these hills. There's a stream. There's a little creek that has cut a ravine over the centuries. Since then, we've been calling this Bloody Run. But there is a large gap. That is where Johnson Haygood's South Carolinians were stationed. They've been moved to the other side of the road. Nobody has replaced them. There is a gap in the Confederate line. The battle is going to begin. Now, James Ricketts' division is off there to the right of the 6th Corps. William Truick's brigade, part of that brigade is the 14th New Jersey. And these guys hit the jackpot because they are going to come up into this attack. It's a hard-fought battle. And the Union Army has taken definitely taken a shellacking at one point. But the 14th New Jersey find the Bloody Run. They find that little hole there in the Confederate line and just come pouring through. And it's going to be bad news for the Confederate Army sitting there, especially the 51st North Carolina. And I've got a quote from a man named J.D. McKeechee of the 51st North Carolina. He wrote this. He said, "The Yanks came in on us and we were slaying them. But the first thing we knew, the Yanks were all around us and all we could do, nothing but leave." And a Captain Charles Saunders actually wrote probably the best quote I've ever heard in my life. He said, "I always thought I could run pretty fast, but I didn't know until then just how fast I could run." The Union Army is going to capture almost 700 prisoners. They're going to capture trenches. There is that hole in the line, and it's looking good. Confederate command is going to see this problem, and troops from Georgia, North Carolina are going to start converging on that gap and finally seal that up. So they stop the gap. They stop it flat. They stop that Union assault. Over here, with the 2nd Brigade, Emory Upton's troops are going to assault. It's not going to be as easy for the boys of the 2nd Connecticut Heavies. They run into Thomas Clingman's North Carolinians, and they run into just a wall of lead. They're commanded by Colonel Elisha Strong Kellogg, who is a man who leads from the front. He says, "Fire not a shot until you're within the enemy's breastworks. I will be with you." But this is a devastating assault for these young men from Litchfield, Connecticut. First time in major combat. A Union account of that charge wrote this: "The ground over which they had passed was covered with men. We could see them fall in all shapes. Some would fall forward as if they had caught their feet and tripped and fell. Others would throw up their arms and fall backward. Others would stagger about a few paces before they dropped." Theodore Vale said that they charged across the open field under a whizzing of lead that dropped somebody at every step. General Thomas Clingman of North Carolina wrote that discharge from my line at once knocked down the front ranks of the enemy column, while the oblique fire among the right and left cut down the men rapidly all along the column. In a few moments, the whole enemy column lay down. Nothing could have been more unfortunate for them. Colonel Kellogg of the 2nd Connecticut Heavy Artillery Regiment is slain. He is killed, and Thomas Clingman of North Carolina sees it. These two men actually make eye contact. Clingman wrote that a tall, uncommonly fine-looking officer in the front rank of the enemy's column, hearing my order and looking me directly in the face, took off his cap and, waving it about his head, cheered his men in words I could not catch. Just as he had placed his hat back on his head, a soldier immediately on my right discharged his musket, and the ball entered the upper part of his forehead, and he fell backward, staggering the two men behind him. This attack is over. This attack is going to ground to a halt. The 2nd Connecticut Heavy Regiment, they are going to take about 30% casualties, and that's going to equate to about 1.5% of the entire male population of their home county, Litchfield, Connecticut. So about 20 years ago, 21 years ago now, in 2003, the good folks of Litchfield, Connecticut asked to have a monument placed here. And on that monument is listed the names of their sons who marched off to war and never came home, and is the only monument on this park.
Thanks, Mark. That was fantastic. Now, to summarize and bring this back down to where we're standing in that particular moment, although that attack had ground to a halt, that Union attack, it had gained some momentum here at Cold Harbor. Grant has seen that not only his cavalry, as Mark mentioned, had defeated Confederate infantry earlier in the day, but now his infantry has taken several lines of works. Again, they were out here in this wood line directly behind us. They're gonna, and I'm gonna ask Sarah to pan over to the left, they're then gonna be pulled back to this wood line here. And this gives Grant, I think, his opportunity. This is the opportunity he's been looking for since May 12th, several weeks earlier. He wants to land a decisive blow, and he begins pulling the rest of Hancock's 2nd Corps, extending the line down here, extending it farther off to the south to prepare for another assault to take place on June 2nd. But those guys are in the 2nd Corps. They're exhausted. And it's going to take time, again, for them to get down here. And remember, it's hot. The roads are dusty. And it will not be until the morning of June 3rd that Grant plans to make this grand assault. And this is the assault that who are familiar with Cold Harbor, this is the assault that we all look to. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Be sure to go back and watch all of our coverage of the 160th anniversary of the Overland Campaign. For Chris White, Sarah K. Byerly, Mark Wilcox, I'm Dan Davis. Thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting battlefield preservation and education.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.